Hello and welcome back to the Simplifiers podcast, where we take topics in work and in life and simplify them. And friends, I want to talk about your yoga practice. If you are doing yoga in any way, shape, or form, or even meditation as a way to exercise or really boost your well-being as a whole, let's talk about how to take that yoga practice deeper. So my special guest today is author Kori Hahn, and she has written a book called Rituals of the Soul, using the 8 ancient principles of yoga to create a modern and meaningful life. She's also created a community gathering called Santosha Society, which is dedicated to travel, surfing, and the soulful life. She hosts numerous trips around the world for hundreds of women who study Ayurveda, yoga, meditation, and all things related to soul growth. So, I'd like to welcome to the Simplifiers podcast, Kori Hahn. Hey, Kori.
Hi, thank you for having me. It's such a joy to be here.
I'm so pleased you're here. And, at the beginning of this year, I started to get back into yoga. And as you probably know, and as listeners that are listening as well, if you haven't done yoga in a long time, it is painful and horrible. And 10 minutes into it, you're like, this is the worst thing ever. Who does this? Isn't it true?
A bunch of self-sabotagers, apparently.
Oh, I know. You're like, because it's a class, I feel so much shame just walking out of the class right now. But it's true. Like, you do something once every blue moon or every 4 months, you're like, this is horrible. This is painful. But isn't it funny how the lesson is inside the challenge of, yes, you have to do it regularly. You have to do it daily. And then it becomes so much more fluid. Your body gets stronger. Your mind gets stronger. And it actually does become pleasurable too, right?
Yes. Well, that's what I really wanted to do in my book, is to make it more pleasurable, to make that time about really being meaningful and to get what you want from it. I think many of us, like you, have always been taught that we do yoga like this. Mm-hmm. We go to a class and we do the 1 hour and maybe 15 minutes of breathing, and then we leave and we have a coconut water.
Yeah.
But yoga has been a spiritual science to teach us how to connect with ourselves. The definition of yoga is actually to stop the mental fluctuations that are creating our suffering. And so when I started thinking of yoga in that way, I realized that I didn't actually need a physical practice because I'm a surfer. Mm-hmm. I am always running after my 5-year-old. My physical body feels okay. Yeah. In fact, I've never broken a bone. I don't have a cavity. That's what wasn't where my suffering is. But I've had intense, debilitating anxiety. I have had a critical mind of a self-loather. So I really started turning my yoga practice into that, even more than that practice. But in turn, I found that I could love it. And so maybe today's podcast is really serendipitous, and we can talk about how to turn your yoga practice into something you love. But of course, there is that initial growing pain of getting back on the treadmill or the yoga mat or anything, the surfboard. After so long, there's going to be a pain there.
100%. And, at the beginning of the year, I was feeling it. I was like, oh, girl, I don't know. Maybe there's something else. Maybe Pilates is better. Maybe I go back to Zumba classes. I don't know. But then I did stick to it. And, here we are 10 months later, and I do love my practice. And every time is completely different. And some days or some weeks might be really challenging. And it sometimes is related to my menstrual cycle. And then other times it's like, it's so much deeper than I ever imagined. It's not just exercise. There's a deep connection to my intuition or divine nudges when I'm, in Shavasana. I mean, all the things.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. That's what we have to focus on too, isn't it? We're doing the downward dog, but from that, these things are coming, and to continue on the path, if that's what you want, that soul connection, you want divine nudges and intuitive pushes, which is really the key to creating a meaningful life, is to know that your soul is actually playing a part in this whole human experience, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, your book it talks a lot about, soul revival and a spiritual rejuvenation. It's not just, yoga's not just for exercise or simply a tool for mental health. And that's the part I want to really pick your brain and have you simplify down, because I think so many of us, especially in what Western culture, have commoditized yoga to be this very shiny, there's techno music and lavender towels and, it's like this whole thing with Lululemon and like just all the stuff. And you're just like, I get that because that makes it more accessible to mainstream culture and more people are getting to experience it. However, what I learned by reading your book is that that's like step 1 or maybe 2 of the 8-step process of taking your yoga practice deeper. And I want to talk about the deep stuff as well.
Me too.
Yeah.
And I I was stuck in that world for a long time. In the past even few weeks, I keep realizing how superficial it felt for so long for me.
Yeah.
But I kept doing it. I think my ego might have been in it more than my soul, to be honest.
Yeah.
But through time, and maybe that's just getting older and having kids, because we grow up soulfully so much more when we have children also.
For sure.
But to really come away from that and say, okay, what's the purpose here? Because my time is cherished. And how are we going to make that time, that yoga time, more valuable? Not just what I'm wearing, not just the style that I'm doing or the beach booty or whatever else is going on, but like I said before, I needed to find a way to heal my anxiety. I needed a way to function in my life, to heal massive grief. That's actually when I found yoga. It started very unsuperficial, became very superficial, and then now is growing unsuperficial again. And isn't that just the process, to see where you have ego and then let it go, and then see where you have ego and again and let it go? And in many ways, that ego is in yoga very much, and in the big world for sure. But I hope that in this book, the readers see that it doesn't have to be that, to not dismiss yoga because of that. I hope that you can do it by yourself without a yoga mat.
Yeah.
Definitely with Goodwill reused holy pants on.
Right. Well, and that's it. I mean, I think that you said it beautifully there. It's the spectrum. You go from one extreme to the other to find the middle, the balance in the middle, to do find make it more profound of a practice. Because I find that you think about and you hear about yoga retreats in India and all the things, and you think, gosh, that seems so far detached, especially for quite a few Americans who've never left the country, right? And it's like, where is it in the middle that it takes yoga away from just simply being how many calories did I burn as an exercise form to something that is really feeding our body, mind, and soul and building our intuition as well. But I want to talk about first the practice of rituals. In the book, you talk a lot about this. Like, why do you think it's important to have rituals in your life specifically for your well-being?
Because what we're doing is we're retraining our habits. And so for me, I was actually almost militaristic with my yoga practice through most of my 20s, totally type A. Like, I practice from 6 until 7:30.
Yes.
And if I don't, then I'm the worst person on the planet, pretty much. There was no compassion there. Yeah. There was no loving awareness,
so
as
much
Ram
story.
Dass talks about.
Yes.
Those practices, that was my ritual for many years, and that did ground me, and I learned discipline, and without a doubt there were benefits from that ritual. But as I got older, I got more flexible. I started learning about this thing called compassion, and I realized that my mind, I thought I had to go and sit for 1 hour and do my meditation during this time before I got out of bed to be successful as a meditator. And if I wasn't consistent like that, then I had failed. And I met a monk once. Actually, during the middle of the pandemic, went to this monastery because I live in Sri Lanka. So there's a lot of Buddhism around in the south where I live.
Yeah.
And I went and I told this monk, I want to come and stay here. I need to come and stay here. Every year I go to re-establish and re-engage my meditation practice by staying somewhere for 1 week and just dedicating my time to meditating. And what he said to me was really changed a lot of how I think I was thinking of all this. And he said, well, you've done this every year. Are you going to keep doing this forever? So you have to escape your kid and your life and everything to come here to meditate. And he was like, you're missing the whole point, honey. I'm not going to let you come here and meditate. And I was like, oh, what? That's never happened before.
Yeah.
So I went home and I started practicing 10 minutes here and there. And if that could add up to as much time as I didn't have a goal anymore. I didn't have this goal. So I started practicing like that. And wow, if I didn't realize that I was integrating mindfulness into my life 20 times a day, it was a habit. So when I felt the scatteredness, when my son wants to play hide and seek for 3 hours and I was like, I can't do this. Suddenly I could take 10 breaths then.
Yeah.
And that became really life-changing. And so I started doing it with everything. When my business started making me feel like I wasn't successful, I wasn't productive enough, I started using the affirmations, which is a script in the Yoga Sutras, but we don't hear about that much. It says, if your mind thinks one way and you want to feel the opposite, you say the opposite and you tell yourself that. So I started saying, I am successful, I am calm. And many times a day, not just once a day. And I think that's really where the rituals change, is they change our neuroplasticity in our brain. It's actually a scientific process that's happening. So you take the wisdom of yoga from the sutras. My entire book is based 100% on those nearly 200 aphorisms that some great wise sage called Patanjali put together back in the day, long before there were even really proper dates. I mean, this was way long ago. There were no yoga mats.
Yeah.
But to take that wisdom, but to apply it without being so strict on yourself, applying it as if every moment actually matters, to create that compassion in every moment, to create that peace. And so the ritual, how I've started realizing this, is by first asking what you need and what you want, and let your rituals guide that. And that way, if you want peace, make moments of peace happen 20 times a day.
Yeah.
And you start thinking your whole day is made up of peace. Even if it's not, even if you flipped out for a moment, you had 20 moments of peace. So that might start outnumbering the non-peaceful moments.
Yes.
We can only hope.
Yes.
Right?
Well, and what I hear in what you say there is, the things we're talking about today are not just strictly relegated to when you are on your yoga mat, but it's also the time away from the mat. So when you're at work, when you're with your children, when you are taking a walk around the block, or even when you are starting to your nighttime ritual of going to sleep. And just the same as babies need a bedtime ritual to calm their bodies, calm their minds and all that, we forget that we as adults need that too. The gentleness, the grace, the love, the kindness, and that rituals can build up endurance and discipline and softness, I think, as well. That's what I hear in what you say.
Absolutely. Anything you want to feel.
Yes.
Anything. Yes. And you can, so suddenly you feel that you have a choice how you're living your life. And you're, like you said, perhaps if you knew your intention more solidly when you went to that first yoga class, when you were like, I'm sick of feeling like I'm out of shape.
Yeah.
And I'm sick of feeling like, I haven't taken time to nurture my soul. If you were there constantly reminding yourself, I'm here because I want to feel strong in my physical body.
Yes.
I want to take this moment that I felt like I supported me spiritually as a soul. Then suddenly it doesn't even matter what kind of movements you're doing or how hard it was. You are there for that intention, and you're making that happen in your life.
Yes.
And that is what is so profound. But for years, I was just showing up to yoga practice because with with not much of an intention, just with a dictator's mind to get things done, and that's where the change happens. I think for me, myself, I can say between, a ritual and a yoga practice, and how they are the same thing, but with different intentions. Really, they can come out very differently.
Yeah, I have a few rituals in my own life. One is every morning right at sunrise, I walk my dog. We have a certain little path that takes only 10 minutes, and I pray out loud. And, because it's dark and nobody's out there, I don't feel self-conscious about that. But I like the idea of maybe utilizing that morning prayer walk to do some I am affirmations and mantras and saying them out loud, because I think there's power in saying something, and you can say it in your head a million times, but there's also power in vocalizing it. It's almost like giving the energy up and out of you and into the universe, God, whatever you want to call it. There's energy there. And I love the idea that when you say, I am a hot mess. No, I am strong. I am graceful. I am beautiful. And all those things that your brain is tacking on a data point. Say, oh, she said that. And so that must be true. And you build data points to build affirmations towards your beliefs and your identity, right?
Oh, Mary, I'm loving you so much. I have goosebumps all over. Exactly. I so agree with everything. And there is some power to saying things aloud.
Yes.
I've even found that I can say I want to do something or be something, but by golly, even if I post that on my Instagram, now I'm suddenly going to make that happen.
Yes.
Even I wrote years ago that I was writing a book. And everyone's kind of like, whatever happened to that book years ago? And it was like, I actually was still writing it. But you know what? Maybe if I didn't say that aloud, I never would have held myself accountable, not to be a martyr and to make myself do it. But there is a power to that. There's a power to, if you feel I love you with someone, to say that, to be so truthful with what you want with yourself, with others. And that's such a beautiful thing. I mean, I have been learning about astrology, and apparently there's a lot of air. And if you have a lot of air in your chart, they're saying that is how we process, by communicating, by writing, by sharing. And so I think especially for me, it's cathartic to say, to write, to have that as one of my personal rituals, because it helps me also to earth it, to manifest it. And so,
yes, and I'd like to read from your book, if you don't mind. So page 21, you say this about rituals. By creating a personalized set of rituals, you can move toward living a life of soul growth and eventually soul liberation. The Buddha became the Buddha in 13 years. He did that one breath at a time. He made meditation his ritual, and he manifested enlightenment. Big results come from baby steps. Birds migrate across oceans, one flap of their wings at a time. In the same way, through your daily rituals, you will find clarity on what your dreams are, and then you will manifest those dreams. With a bit of strategy and a heartfelt belief, you can manifest anything you want, and your dreams will begin to come true. When you feel your life is aligning with the outer world more and more, you'll know the rituals are working. And when you find more balance and harmony in your life rather than resistance, you'll know the rituals are creating an alchemy within you. When you start feeling a sense of contentment and purpose, you'll know that you're connecting deeply with your soul. And you will only want to go deeper into yourself and further towards your dreams because you have a step-by-step guide to help you do just that. It's so beautiful. And I think we forget because we get so darn busy, or we fill our schedules with busy because our ego is striving for validation or achievement on an external level, that we lose sight of truly what our soul wants, desires, and is asking for through our intuition, right?
Yes, our entire purpose.
Yeah, the whole thing, guys. Spoiler alert.
Trying to make money, trying to make our marriage be that fairy tale dream of lasting our whole life. I mean, I also did it. When I started my business, I was finding my worth through my productivity.
Yes.
Through my money, through all these other things. And it wasn't really, I think many of us realized when the COVID pandemic began and we were locked in and suddenly our businesses weren't successful. And suddenly how fast we ran our marathon today wasn't happening. And all these things that we've tied our worth to were not there anymore. Many people started realizing that there was something else. I've seen it in all my friends and family. I don't think anyone has come out of this unscathed of seeing ways that they have put their worth in other people, other places, other things. And yes, distraction is the biggest thing that holds us from our soul growth.
Yeah.
And it's so common. And even if you look at the rising numbers and ADHD and how difficult it is for people to concentrate, and that's all because of all these other things around us, our phones. And it's just, we have to come back to learning to focus single-pointedly, which is a Buddhist concept, and to not tie all that busyness into worth.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I kind of relate it to, we've been sort of like dancing around in the dark, you know, and maybe there's a little spotlight here, maybe there's that. And we've been chasing whatever, fame, money, success, love, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And somebody's flipped the lights on. You're like, oh, jeez, like, has this been here the whole time? Like, yeah, and it has. I think the pandemic has really given us all an opportunity to awaken and to scoop out some of the stuff that just don't make sense anymore. So, what role do you imagine yoga plays in becoming more intuitive as a whole, and really, truly hearing, listening, and doing something about what your soul calling is saying to you?
Yes, this is a big one, right? I mean, this is the whole basis of my book. I feel like my book is separated into two parts. It's how to become intuitive and how to act on it.
Sure.
And for years, I was in a relationship up here in Alaska where I currently am recording this. And I had a relationship for 10 years. And inside, I always knew there was a feeling for me to go. But on paper, it looked good. Society, it looked good. Everything seemed, even all my friends were like, it's probably depression. Go get a therapist.
Yeah.
No one ever said, maybe that's just not the right person for you, because in society's lens, I really shouldn't have left him. Yeah. But honestly, when I did, I was like, oh my God, for 10 years, there's been a voice saying to go do something else. And it had nothing to do with that person. It had to do with my journey.
Yeah.
But we're raised, thinking that our journey is what society wants from us. And the moment I started listening to my own intuition was a really big game changer. And not only did I learn my superpowers and how to feel worthy in myself, but I also started seeing how my life was taking a different trajectory completely. Yeah. And things that I once thought were impossible suddenly were very possible. So I left that relationship, ended up starting a business, writing a book, having a baby, moving to Sri Lanka. So many wild things to most people would say, what? That all happened in 5 years. And so the only way to start knowing what your intuition is saying for you is to stop and listen to it, to get rid of those distractions as best as you can.
Yes. And
to take space from what's sucking your energy. That could be a relationship, that could be your business. And to really, I got really into the boundary work, and I read a book recently, Terry Cole's Boundary Boss. And it was really helpful, because what I never realized about boundaries is that my self boundaries are what's most important. This isn't about other people. This is about me. So when I set a boundary to have in certain rituals or to do certain things, even if that's to become intuitive, it was up to me to make those stick around. It's up to me to make those happen. And so to look at your work and say, oh, wow, I'm a workaholic. I spend 8 hours a day working. do I want my entire life to be based around work? Because right now that's what my schedule looks like. And it's stressing me out. And I come home and yell at my kid. So all I want to do is be nice to my kid and not be a workaholic. So you set those boundaries for yourself. And if your intention is to become intuitive, which is a very, very crucial aspect, then you're going to have to take time to look at your schedule, figure out how you can create space for yourself, how you can start to silence your mind and all these conditions that society has left you with, and to really just stop and listen to yourself. That's really what it's all about. So in my book, I start with 3 ways. I do believe that asana, the yoga practice you talked about in the beginning, is really more about creating space. I believe that's the goal of asana practice, to look at your body and to say, oh, my hips hurt. They feel tight. What pose can I do to make them feel untight? Or for most of us, it's maybe a little bit in the physical body, but in the mental body, oh, wow. There's definitely opportunities for more room for most of us. Like my anxiety is a problem. My worry about this is a problem. So looking at all that and say, how can I create space with everything and in every aspect, even spirituality? If you want to feel more spiritually engaged, more intuitive, learn the voice of your soul, you're going to have to commit to creating space. Then teaching your mind to focus, which is all what Eckhart Tolle is so famous for, the power of now, learning how to practice that, learning how to be here now, like Ram Dass says. This is a skill. We learn it by practicing. You can start by counting your breath. Inhale 1, exhale 1, inhale 2, exhale 2. And in the beginning, you might not even be able to get to 10 before you're like, oh, I forgot I put toast in the oven 3 days ago, or whatever happened,
Right. Yeah. Well,
but slowly you learn to concentrate. And the last one before we can move on is to feel it. So once you learn to get the clutter out of your mind, you're able to truly feel into yourself. This is how I feel right now. This is how I feel about this. And this is where we start to heal. And there could be pain. There could be things coming up in this process. It is going to have the burn, like you said before, there will be a burn there. But slowly you're creating so much space that your intuition will demand your attention.
So true. And there's so much that you said there. I want to unpack a little. First off, Terry Cole, incredible. We've had her on the podcast a couple of times, and that book, Boundary Boss, is such a great book, especially if you feel like your boundaries have been trampled. You can find a link to that episode, as well as all things that we talk about on this podcast, at the simplifierspodcast.com. You can find the show notes. All the things are listed there. But yes, Terry is incredible. One thing that I find is interesting, I've been a small business owner 18 years now. And the first 11 years, I was a wedding and an event planner. And it was not uncommon for me to work 60, 70-hour weeks consistently, not just in busy season, like all the time. And, what I find is interesting. Side note, I don't do that anymore. I work a fraction of those. No joke. I don't think I would be alive. Like physically would probably have had a heart attack by then, because it's just not sustainable. Not for anybody. You could do that in your late 20s. You can't do that in your 40s. I don't think, not for any sustainable amount of time, nor should you. And I think that it took a little bit of maturity on my part to create space in my calendar. And I do that in a very, very practical way. Of using Google Calendar as a tool and not allowing calls with clients or meetings to be back to back. Put breathing room into your calendar. Link up your scheduling widget to not allow things to get booked back to back. And that gives me space and time to walk the dog a couple of times during the workday, to actually get out in sunshine, to have a moment to breathe and reconnect. That's one thing that really comes up. But the other thing is, because I've suffered from anxiety and as well as depression over the years, and something we talk a lot about here at the Simplifiers. And one aha moment that I had when it relates to my anxiety is, do you know how in that moment when you get really ramped up and you can feel it kind of rising in your neck and you just feel your physical body going into panic mode because of something, whatever that something is. You got a text message you weren't expecting, or something's triggered you. What I think is really interesting is if you can have the clarity to zoom out of the petri dish just for a hot second and realize that the world itself as a whole has not changed. It's only your reaction physically that has changed. So yes, somebody sent you a text message that triggered you. You know, maybe something is going on in the world, but your reaction is not actually impacting the world as a whole. Like, you're not changing the weather. You're not going to change other people that are causing you strife and anxiety. You're not changing the situation whatsoever. So if that's the case, can you change your reaction? Like, can the things that you can control are your thoughts, your emotions, your feelings, your behaviors, your actions, right? So I just think it's always interesting if you can catch yourself on the verge of a panic attack going, hang on, this reaction, A, doesn't define me, but B, doesn't actually change anything about what's going on, right?
Absolutely. There has been a big aha moment with that for me also lately, that I used to get quite overwhelmed, and I'm such an emotional body. I'm just full of emotions at all times, dramatic. You can even see it in the expressions on my face.
Yeah.
But I suddenly realized I would get overwhelmed and really stressed and start reacting exactly what you said. And that somehow by creating enough space, the overwhelmed really stopped happening. And even when I started seeing my mind going into those almost nervous breakdown states, I would just go into a practice, calm my nervous system. I know my rituals, know how I feel, not try to numb it, because that's what happens when you feel that pain and then you go into a nervous response system, is you're almost distracting yourself from it. You want to numb it instead of just saying, this is okay. I can be here with this. I'm okay.
Yes.
And I have a life coach once that told me when that happens, just to repeat, I am okay. Everything is okay. These are just thoughts.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful thing to not want to change the world anymore in that way. Of course, we want to be a beacon of light and good humanity and goodwill for the world. But honestly, like, all we can do is show our light, show what we've learned. Teach what works for you.
Yes.
Whether in any way, especially if you have clients, that's exactly what you learn and you teach from your own experience,
right.
you know? And yes, it's such a beautiful thing to learn not to react so much, but aren't we all still learning? I mean, and to be gentle when it does.
Well, it's the same as yoga and meditation, right? So like when you're meditating and you're feeling like you're in the present, you feel in the present, and then you instantly think of something else. It's that gentle nudge back to the present, that gentle nudge that helps you. I love that idea of just saying, I am okay. You know, just remember to nudge you back. Because I think anxiety is that feeling like, holy crap, this is too much. I can't handle it. And then depression is, it will never get better. There is no out of this, you know? And so when you lose hope and you start letting despair seep in as poison, and that, it's tough. It's, I wish there was a quick fix, but it is that gentle nudge back again. And again, right?
Yes, I believe so. And accepting that the anger and the sadness and the overwhelm are all a part of it.
Yeah.
That's why we need time.
Yeah.
We have to schedule in time. And that's why, really, that's what that yoga practice is all about. Do what the hell you want during your yoga practice.
Yes.
But make sure you have time that's all about you, remembering that you're a sacred being, and that even if you feel angry, Mother Teresa was angry. Mother Teresa had doubts about her religion. Yes. You know, I mean, everyone has their things. Like Dr. Phil gets divorced. Come on, you guys. Like, everyone's dealing with their own things, you know, and just not let it be such a big deal. And I think that for me, that came with that yoga realization, that time on the yoga mat, or many times during a day with the rituals.
Yeah.
And to just remind yourself you're a sacred being. And when I started realizing how sacred I was, and by connecting, when you connect with your intuition, that comes too. But then came the worth to feel, I felt compassionate towards myself. I felt worthy in myself because I'm a soul. And I'm here to experience something as a soul.
Yeah.
All the other stuff we talked about, you know, the ego, the superficial, the Lululemon, that's all ego. But when I really could come in and take this time to get to know my soul, then I wasn't overwhelmed as much anymore. Then I saw the anger as part of the process.
Yes.
I saw all of these speed bumps. And in Hinduism, you know, there's a god, her name is a goddess, I should say. And her name is Kali, and she has a big red tongue and she wears skulls around her neck. And I was always like, I'm definitely not going to put that goddess in my house. You know what I mean? Because I wanted everything like really pretty. And now I have like 10 because she is my reminder that that is childbirth. That brings you to your joy, the most painful, crazy experience. That's the process. That's actually the beauty. When you stop reacting to that, I keep using anger because obviously that's what I'm trying to deal with right now. But anything, the depression, the anxiety, and you can just say, this is a part of the process. I'm a sacred being. How can I support myself? What's my intention? What do I want to feel? And create some rituals from that. Everything feels more manageable, at least for me.
For sure. So let's talk about self-worth then. I mean, because I think that this is something that keeps coming up here and there. And I hate to stereotype, but I think women do struggle with it. But to be fair, I think all people struggle with it in different layers and different seasons of their life. You know, how could yoga help us redefine and realign our self-worth?
That's a good question. And actually, that was the one question when I got my list of questions we would be talking about that I was like, ooh, that's a big one.
Yeah.
It's a really big.
Yeah.
And I have my own theory. Maybe it's another book coming, but I believe that when we truly realize our worth as a soul, we're done reincarnating. I honestly believe that's it. That's the goal.
Wow.
If you truly lived like you were so engaged in your soul, you realize the humanness was one thing and the soul is the other, you would see how incredibly innately worthy you always were. And you say women deal with it, but I honestly think women just voice it more. We love to talk. Generally, look at us here. Just, hello, can we talk about self-worth? Yeah. I mean, we're talking about this.
Yeah.
And what I found, I don't have nearly as many male relationships as female, but I found that they're very uncomfortable talking about it. And there are many men that I even talk to find that their worth comes because they've done a good job making money or they've supported their family. It still is never based on an innate sense of worth. So, and when we realize that we're all running around with these worthiness wounds, we can start being so much more compassionate, not only to ourselves, but to others. And it's helped me with my ex-husband is realizing he's only doing this because he doesn't feel worthy, not as a way to belittle him, but that we're all making these mistakes in life, essentially, because of we don't feel worthy. If we did, it would all be so much easier. We'd be floating. We would be our favorite, people like the Dalai Lama, who obviously does understand his worth, and Ram Dass, and these great examples, Gandhi, Martin Luther King, they were so inspirational because they have realized that, I believe.
I think that my favorite yoga teachers, and funny enough, I just came from a yoga session right before we recorded this one. So it's fresh in my mind. My favorite people say, right at the beginning, like, I'm just the guide. I'm here to facilitate your practice today. So take my suggestions as simply that. It's not about doing it perfect or doing it this exact way. And I think that relates here because when I have almost permission to do it my own way, to take the modifications that I need in my own practice, I may need more one day versus another day. That teaches me a core virtue and value of empathy and compassion, grace. And then when I can learn that for myself, see my yoga teacher model that in her words, for my yoga practice, but then I can practice that as a receiving empathy, compassion, and grace, then that does translate in my own self-worth, but then, giving that to others so that they can start to heal their wounds as well. Not fixing them. Let's be very clear.
Yes. I love that.
But providing that empathy and compassion and grace to others, I think that there's so much to that. It's so profound.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. And with my marriage, even I was always trying to fix,
Yeah.
I know the answer to this. I study this.
Yeah.
I do this, right? Then do it.
Yeah.
And show. But what's been beautiful is that since I stopped, I feel like in a way over the past year, I stopped trying to teach. I just focused on my book. I wasn't really teaching anywhere in a public space or anything like that. But when I realized that this was all about how I could embody this, that's how I'm going to teach. Suddenly my friends, people from social media, they started contacting me. How can you help me to feel that way?
Yeah.
And it's the best marketing strategy for a yoga teacher ever. Embody it. You don't have to
walk the walk.
Yeah, you're not here to help everyone else. You're here to help yourself.
Right.
And and by doing that, you spread a really beautiful, bright light to everyone that's in your path. And seeing there's another way.
Truly, 100%. And, you talk a lot about in the book that, when you really tap into these 8 steps or the 8 practices, it really can help you during seasons of grief and heartbreak or just difficult times. We've all been through them. And sometimes they're really short and sometimes they are excruciatingly long. So as we wrap up, would you be willing to kind of lead us through a very quick, maybe 5 or 7 minute long practice of what's called Yoga Nidra?
Yes, beautiful. I love to. And I love Yoga Nidra. I talk about it a lot in the book. I think I've added that as one of the rituals for like 3 of the different principles. Like it's in there. You can't miss it. Even if you miss the first one, you're going to come back to it. But it's incredibly powerful. And what I love about it is the training I did was with a psychiatrist. And I was surrounded by psychiatrists and psychotherapists in this training. And I was so surprised because it's called Yoga Nidra. But what happens is it's one of the most scientifically proven ways to holistically heal post-traumatic stress.
Wow.
And in fact, it's been so effective that the veteran hospitals in the US have adopted this practice. And it's one of the most efficient ways of helping these returning war vets or returning maybe, from anywhere, any kind of traumatic situation, and to let that heal, to be able to see that. And sometimes those traumas are unconscious.
Yeah.
And so, even if you don't know what traumas you're healing from, this is a way to heal it. And it's just a mind-blowing, amazing practice. And for me, it has been the most beneficial for also helping me to become intuitive. So I hope that encourages your readers to dabble in it. You can find so many Yoga Nidras all over the internet, on YouTube, on Insight Meditation Timer. I have some online as well. But to really take the time to find one and do a full practice if you can. But I'm happy to walk you through and give you the gist of how it works. And lately, I've been guiding myself through it. So feel free, like you said, to be your own guru and to guide yourself into the different layers of your body. And that's what that does. In Yoga Nidra, they say there are different layers of our consciousness. And all we're doing is moving in through each of those layers, systematically relaxing each and every one.
Yeah.
And so let's do that then. Most Yoga Nidras you would do lying down. So obviously, if you're listening to this in the car or anything else, keep your eyes open and maybe pause it and come back to it.
Yes.
But if you are in a place that feels very safe and secure, you can lay down if you'd like and completely relax your body as much as you can. If you're sitting for now, that's okay. But ask yourself how you can get 10% more comfortable. If you moved your shoulders a little bit, how could you make your body more comfortable? And then as we begin, move into your awareness into your nose. Feel the breath moving in and out. And mindfulness leads to relaxation. So as you move your mind through your body, naturally the body is just going to relax. So we're beginning here in the breath and the breath layer to calm the nervous system and to focus the mind into the body, into this present moment. Sometimes it takes the mind a minute to get on board, and that's why we take a little extra time, almost always in the beginning of a meditation or a practice, just to ground. Now, we will move our awareness to the top of the head, to the crown of the head, and see if you feel any sensations there. You can move your awareness down the forehead, feeling the eyebrows, feeling the ridge of your nose, and feel the bones around your eyes all the way into your eyeballs. Move into your cheekbones, your jaw, the ridges of your lips, your teeth, your tongue. Move in from your mouth all the way down and through the throat, moving inward. From here, you'll move right into your heart. Feel the arteries moving from your heart up and into your shoulders and all the way down into your fingertips. Note if you feel any sensations in your fingertips or anywhere. Then guide that consciousness back up through your arms, back into your heart, down through your core. Feel your belly. Move into your hips, your pelvis. And follow that consciousness all the way down into your toes. Then with one breath, inhale through your toes and bring that moving consciousness all the way back up to the crown of the head. And then all the way back down. You can move back and forth through the body a few more times. And whenever you're ready, bring your energy right back into your heart. And I want you to think of one heartfelt desire for yourself. What do you want to feel? What do you want to embody? What's something you need right now? And we're going to turn that desire, your need, into an I am statement. If you want to feel healthy, you could say, I am healthy. If you want to feel calm, you could say, I am calm. And drop that seed right into your heart. If you want, you can continue moving through the body with your conscious awareness. You're dropping that. It's called a sankalpa, that I am statement. And it's a strong intention, a seed you're dropping into yourself. And as you relax your body layer by layer through this practice, that I am statement will take hold. It will start to move through you. You will start to embody that. And in your own time, go ahead and open your eyes slowly. Come back into this present moment. And see if you notice that your body's a little more relaxed. And usually this would be a longer hypnosis type practice. But I wanted to give your listeners and whoever else is here or anyone who's ever studied Yoga Nidra or wants to, an idea of how that works.
Yeah.
Usually, we just went on the top layer, which is the physical body and the breath layer. So that's the top two layers of consciousness. But as you move in deeper, you'll realize there's an emotional layer there. And you can move all the way in a belief layer where those, I could never do that. And those will start coming out. And you can really start releasing the tension and mindfully creating that relaxation. It's a practice.
It's beautiful. So, yes. Thank you
yeah.
so much for leading us through that. And for those that are just curious about this work or thinking about really how to make your yoga practice something more profound, deeper in practice, both on the mat and off the mat, I highly recommend checking out your book. It's available in bookstores now, either online or at your local favorite bookshop around the corner. And it's called Rituals of the Soul, using the 8 ancient principles of yoga to create a modern and meaningful life. So beautiful. And I really like this so much specifically that after every chapter, you really simplify it down. But then there are exercises to try and scripts to test and mantras to integrate into your life. And you take what you need and you scrap the rest. And I just love that. It makes it very simple and accessible for so many of us as well. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's my pleasure chatting with you. And as we wrap up, there's a few questions I like to ask everybody. And again, thank you so much for your time today. So first question I have for you is, tell us what's one book or blog that you're reading these days that's either inspiring you or poking holes and challenging your belief system?
Well, since we talked a lot about worth, and worth is definitely, like I said, one of the, I think, our greatest distraction from soul growth and even enlightenment, Zion, Shangri-La, whatever you want to call it. Worth is so important. And there's a new book out recently by a beautiful, just a beautiful soul, and Najwa Zebian, and her book is called Welcome Home. And it has hit the shelves and flown right off of it. It's very popular, but it has been one of the most beautiful books. And you create your own home within yourself. And she teaches you how to have that worth with self-acceptance by really just seeing what's there and accepting it. And you move through all these different chapters, which our rooms in the house. And I believe that book helped me, just stepped me up a few notch in my self-worth. So I'm definitely love spreading my own personal, I guess, how meaningful that book was to me. I love sharing for others to read it.
Yes, I love it. I haven't heard about this book, so we'll link that up in the show notes for people if you guys want to check it out. Again, it's over at the simplifierspodcast.com. So tell us, who's one person in your network, somebody that you know personally, you just feel is up to brilliant things. We could shine a spotlight on them, and who knows, maybe one day we'll have them on the podcast.
Perfect. I think I know just the person, and it's a friend. She's currently in Bali, but she's a bit of a wanderer like myself. Amazing singer, like Aretha Franklin style voice. But she is right now kickstarting, getting some funding for an album she just made, and it's 4 mantras, all are prayers, mantras for grief and for healing grief. And she spent a lot of time in New York City. She actually flew to Bali just for a month-long trip when the COVID outbreak started. And many of her friends are still in New York, and she had a lot of loss as the pandemic happened. And so she created this album.
Beautiful.
And I know for myself, when I have big moments of grief, I need to get that out somehow. So when you join her Kickstarter or you support it, even just $10, you get a list of what all the words mean on that mantra, and you can sing with it. And it might be the perfect ritual for someone dealing with grief or something quite heavy, if you'd like to sing along and feel like that helps you get your emotions out. I know that's helped me. Norma Jean Balinski, and the album is called Transitions in Grace.
Beautiful.
And it's going to be beautiful. And it comes from 4 different religious backgrounds. And so, yes, check it out. It's currently, she's trying to gain more support on Kickstart because she keeps adding songs to the album.
Love it.
As more money keeps coming in, and it's coming, and she's doing great. So if you want to support that project.
Love it. Well, I will link her up in the show notes. You guys can find her Kickstarter campaign there as well. So I believe simplicity and gratitude go hand in hand. Tell me, what are you grateful for today?
I'm grateful for this call, Mary. It's so nice to feel connected with people that have the same interests and hobbies. Yeah. It's been a long year of feeling quite alone. Yeah. And for us to figure out grief in our own lives, separating, creating space from things that are no longer serving us. And so I'm grateful for this call, but also for my son, always, each and every day.
Yeah.
He's just great.
I'm grateful for you too. I loved the book. I loved the conversation today, and I really hope it is a value, great value. I know it will be to so many people around the world. So if you're curious about the work that Kori does in the world, her website is santoshasociety.com. Again, all the links, including her social media links, are in the show notes, so you can link up with her or her team at thesimplifierspodcast.com. So my final question for you today, and again, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. Someone somewhere is listening to you and I right this very second, and she's thinking, yeah, that sounds good. But you know, that person Mary was describing at the beginning of the conversation, like screaming obscenities in the back of the yoga room, hates life, everything hurts, just wants to quit. That's me. What's one thing you could whisper into her ear right now just to encourage her in this moment?
Quit doing those things. That's your intuition telling you maybe there's something else you're actually going to enjoy and get the same results. I think anger, frustration, and it's all guiding us to move a different way. Yeah. It really can be so much easier than we're making it. I'm not here to try to get you to do 100 down dogs. I honestly don't care. I don't talk about any physical yoga in the book. I want to guide you to find what you love to do so that you will love yoga in the same way that I do now. And so quit doing that.
I love it. Kori, big love to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.